Yeah, it's the space guy on TV. I wanted to talk about this as something that your center can do. It's a lot of you in British Columbia. You'd recognize me probably because yes, I'm the space guy on TV. I've been going into global television for the last 7 years or so. About once a month, I go in and I talk about the space news, and it was something that kind of came to be over the course of about a year. And looking back on it, it's if your center is interested in doing something like this and having some kind of a presence on television on your local or even provincial news networks, I think it's pretty easy to do. And I'm hoping I can give you some advice here on how to accomplish this. It's great for your center, and also if you have an individual like myself who is likes to be the center of attention, it's pretty cool when I go into places. I go into restaurants and people come up and recognize me and they're, hey, you're the space guy. It's, yes, I am. And yeah, so let's here I'll start with a little episode of what I've got here. How do I go to a just trying to reduce my screen. There we go. Okay, so here's just an example episode of what I'm talking about. I think I want that one there.
McGillivray is with us from the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. A little space talk with Scott on a Saturday morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Looking forward to maybe seeing a lunar eclipse this week.
Yeah, so the big event this week, Wednesday morning, if you can set your alarm early, there's a lunar eclipse.
How early?
How early? So it depends how much you want to see. It starts at about 3 a.m. The moon moves into the Earth's shadow, and then it's going to end about 7 a.m. So, you know, if you can wake up a bit earlier than normal, if you do want to see the red blood moon, you have to be up before 6, though.
Okay.
And then from 6 to 7, the moon starts moving out of the shadow again.
Very cool. Is this a rare event?
So they're not all that rare. They're definitely way more common than solar eclipses because the moon is much smaller than the Earth, and the Earth creates a bigger shadow. They happen about twice a year. Now sometimes they only happen once a year, but they're still really cool when they do happen.
And what do you need to be able to see something like this?
You don't need anything. The great thing about the moon and astronomy is you can see it from anywhere. You know, I could be in the middle of a city and look up. I might not see stars.
You don't need special glasses?
No, you can just see the moon. It's much different than a solar eclipse.
Okay, so get up early on Wednesday and see something spectacular. Tell me about the NASA.
Messenger. So this is a really cool space project, and we actually have an event coming up tonight related to this. This was a spacecraft that went to orbit Mercury and do a bunch of science, I guess about 5 or 6 years ago. Now, some of the discoveries we made, oh, there it is right there. So you can see it's got a heat shield on it. That's to block all of the energy from the sun, so it's so close to the sun. And here's some of the close-ups. It looks a lot like the moon, you know, and it's actually similar in size to the moon. But one thing we discovered is it's much more dense. And this picture, this is here for my dad. My dad has a geology degree from UBC, and this is astrogeology, where they take that gray image we saw earlier and they enhance all the colors. And part of this mission was these enhanced colors, we can use that to detect the different elements and the different substrates that are on the surface of Mercury and come up with some idea of what it's made of.
And what have they come up with?
So it turns out it's got a lot of iron in it. But also, I was at an event last night with Dr. Nancy Chabot from the mission, and she was telling me that they don't know what that means yet. So they're still analyzing those colors, trying to figure out what they are.
Very interesting. And the doctor will be speaking as well?
Yeah, she'll be tonight at SFU. This is a free event.
Nice.
Tonight at 7:30. All the details are on our website, and everyone's welcome to show up.
Very good. All right. If you want to check it out, rasc-vancouver.com is the website. You can find out when Dr. Nancy is going to be speaking tonight. Probably run into Scott and ask him some space questions.
I'll be there too. And if the weather cooperates, we'll open the observatory.
Very cool. All right. At RASC Vancouver, as well as how you can follow them on social media. Scott, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Always fun.
All right. I can't wait.
All right. Let's go back to my presentation here. So that was just a little, hang on here. Let me stop that music. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so that was just a little preview of what we do. I skipped through part of that, but I go on for about 5 minutes. I can talk about the latest in space news, and it's a very good opportunity to promote your monthly event. So even though there wasn't anything happening with Mercury Messenger that month, it was some data from the past, I could still go in and talk about it because, hey, Nancy Chabot from the team is coming to speak at SFU tonight. So just to give you an idea of how things all begin in the newsroom, this is what a newsroom looks like. And we might have some journalists in our group here who would recognize a scene like this. It's really, there's a whole room full of people sitting at desks who are surfing the internet, surfing the feeds, surfing whatever they can to try to find the next breaking news so they can start reporting on it. And the people who work in this room, it tends to be, they tend to be younger. It's a lot of aspiring journalists who are right out of school, and they're trying to get their break. They're trying to get on TV, but they need to put in the time in the trenches. So you get a lot of people who don't have a lot of life experience yet. They might have a journalism degree, but they might not have pursued some other interests. So when it comes to something like space, anything that they read about space, they probably have absolutely no idea what anything means or what anything is like that. So when they're sitting there and they get an email like this comes in, and here's one that I sent to the morning show at Global News. I say, hey, morning show, I'm an astronomer, and there's a meteor shower coming up on August 11th. Would you like a volunteer to join you in the studio one morning? And they love getting emails like this. So if you want to get your big break on TV, you can usually find their contact info. It's usually morning show or something. It'll be on their website. And just send them an email, and some producer will read this. And this is great for them because they get 5 minutes of good content that they don't have to work on. You're going to be the expert coming in and doing all the work. So, it's a good starting point. Okay. Everyone goes through this. They book you. They say, yeah, sure, great. Come in 10 a.m. You're going to be on the news with Lynn Collier. And yes, and you get totally nervous. We're not actors. We're astronomers. Like, astronomy isn't exactly the most social event. We go out in remote places at night and hide under the stars. And I remember Dr. Howard Trottier telling me, it was right before he did a radio interview with the CBC, and he was super duper nervous. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, Howard, you have like observatories named after you, and you have like 2 other observatories that you own, and you're the best astrophotographer I know. Like, and you can't go on CBC radio just to talk about astronomy for like 2 minutes? Like, why are you so nervous? And it made me realize one thing is you're the expert in the room, and you know at least 1 million times more than your audience. So when you get on there, and Lynn Collier, the very first time I was on TV, she was fantastic. And she said to me during the commercial break, she said, just, Scott, I need you to just dumb it right down. So when I go on there, I pretend that my grandma's watching, and not in a sense that I'd be nervous that my grandma is watching. I get it like in a sense that if I need to explain something, I need to explain it to grandma. And I remember when Chime came online, and it's like, oh, Chime's online. I can talk about dark energy. Well, how do you explain dark energy to grandma? So I kind of worked on it for like, I was on there for maybe, here, I've got somebody in the chat. Never mind, I'll find that at the end. I was thinking about this, and I gave this analogy of like a cinnamon bun with raisins in it, and as it bakes, it expands like the universe. But then my dad walks in, and he reaches into the oven, and he grabs a chunk off, and now Now, like those raisins are moving even faster. All the ones that are around the edge are getting ripped away by some unknown force. And my dad was the dark energy. And I got great feedback after that. All these people who had no science background were saying, Scott, I totally understand dark energy now. Another thing that you can do is you're on there for 5 minutes and you don't know what they're going to ask. You can try to give those producers some kind of a script, but I found that that never works. I try to give them a couple pictures. The last thing that I want is the camera to be on me for 5 minutes. That makes me really nervous. So I found things like props. So here I am doing a Christmas show, and I was talking about what's the best telescope to buy. So this is easy. You just go in there and you can talk for 5 minutes about these two telescopes and why one is great for a new astronomer and one is just absolutely awful for everybody. Videos are also good. NASA has any NASA mission that's happening, they have some absolutely fantastic animations. A lot of their concept animations are on their YouTube feed. When you do pictures, I try to throw in 1 or 2 pictures, but I try not to go too far with that because you're not in control of the pictures like you are with the props. When it's the props, I can point at stuff, the camera just follows me. When it's the pictures, you have that producer in the back room who's, they're doing about 20 other things and the phone's ringing and there's breaking news somewhere else. And they're trying to like scroll through your pictures and follow along with you as you're going, and they don't know anything about astronomy. So I try to just throw in like 1 picture and remember that grandma's watching. So I'll keep it super simple. Like for example, when Beetlejuice was acting very funny, that was about a year ago when it got really dim. I just had a simple picture of the constellation Orion. And remember, it's grandma, she doesn't know her constellation. So I had a picture of it with an arrow pointing at Beetlejuice saying, hey, look at that star. And that star used to be the brightest in the constellation. Now it's not. So here's basically a sample of what I sent into Global News before doing one of the shows. I gather all my links. It's a bit of work, and I gather the links in the week ahead of time, and I try to send them at least 24 hours, hopefully 48 hours in advance. It gives the producer some time to actually snip the videos. You notice I have the second video. It's the second link at the bottom where I give a time slice, and they have all the tools that they can cut out, pieces of whatever video you can find on YouTube. Here at the start, I say, yeah, we're just going to talk about the meteor shower, and I'll have a meteor on the table. Yeah, and then there's the bottom. I have 1 picture. So let's see. All right, showtime. Just relax and do your best. I don't know what to tell you for this. I took this picture because I think it was my first time I was on with Colleen Christie. And I've always had a crush on her, and so I go on there, and she's super hot, and we're talking about the OSIRIS-REx mission, and was it OSIRIS-REx? No, it was the Mars Insight that we were talking about, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ease the tension by starting with a joke, and I said, hey, Colleen, there's no earthquakes on Mars, and she says, oh no, I didn't know that. Why is that? And I says, well, because earthquakes, they happen on Earth. So on Mars you have, and she just looked at me and she didn't know what to say. And we had this awkward silence for a few seconds. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't just say that, did I? So anyway, and then I just could go into it. I said, well, it's actually, they really are called Mars quakes. And here's this lander on Mars that's measuring Mars quakes. And we cut to the NASA video at that point. I guarantee they will call you back. If you start doing this, they'll email you anytime anything happens in space and they need someone to interview about it. They're gonna call you back, try to get you in the studio, try to get you on Skype or over the phone. One thing you got to keep in mind is there is this difference between astronomy and being a space geek, and you might need to be both of them. A lot of people don't. As astronomers, we know the difference between what NASA is doing, sending rockets to the ISS, and what it's like to have a telescope to look at galaxies far, far away. On the news, they don't, and the average person doesn't see the difference in that. So you're going to get called about both types of things. just be prepared for it. It's okay if you're not totally a space geek. You know, remember, you probably still know 100 times more than anybody watching. Sometimes you do get a topic that's very over your head, or they want you to come in and you're unavailable. Having some backups on speed dial is awesome. I remember actually our last speaker today will be Dr. Jess McGillivray. And when her team measured the first gravitational wave, that was absolutely huge. And I had no idea what it meant or how to talk about it or anything. And they wanted somebody on the air in the next hour. And it turned out I had Jamie Matthews' phone number on my speed dial. So I sent him a text and I was like, Jamie, they need somebody on TV. And I think Jamie was in Paris, and he came through and stole the show. He came through on Skype and explained it. He was sitting at a cafe in Paris and had like a croissant that he was stretching out. It was pretty awesome. The last tip, it is quite a bit of work. And when I was first offered this, I went on about 3 times with Lynn. They kept calling me back. And Lynn Collier said, hey, Scott, you know, if you want, we can make this a regular thing, and you can just have your own show, your own 5 minutes every month on Global News. And I'm like, whoa, this is a big deal. And I was really busy at work and life and everything else. And a good friend of mine who is a very successful guy who I really respect said to me, he's like, Scott, you can't turn down this opportunity that you have. There are other things in your life that you can push aside and deprioritize for this. And I'm very happy that I did it. Yes, it's a lot of work, but you know, if you're serious about it and you really do want to be that face on TV and promote your center, and you can have a lot of fun with this. Like it's like everything we do. It's a very rewarding volunteer job that you get. One last bit of advice here before I show my final clip. Like everything, you want to rehearse it. A lot of my analogies that I try to come up with on TV, I usually with my morning coffee crew, I would explain it to them first and see how it goes, get my feedback. Another thing is the reporter, she probably doesn't know much about space. So I've found that if you want the interview to go a certain way, you just let it go that way. And no matter what question she asks, I will give my already pre-prepared answer about what I want to talk about. And you'll see that in my final clip. I actually do that. And then, like I said earlier, don't give the producers too much work to do. Don't give them a photo album. It's much better if you have props. I think my props in that picture there, I've got a paper cup and a coffee cup, and I'm explaining a binary system between a black hole and a star, and how we can measure the mass of black holes using that method. So let's go to my final video here. And this is actually, if you're serious about doing this, I would highly suggest trying to get on to talk about the Perseid meteor shower, because that's something everybody's interested in. And as an astronomer, it's a really easy subject to talk about. So here I am with Jennifer Palma. Let's share the video.
Welcome back. One of the most incredible astronomical events of the year is happening all weekend long, and joining us now to tell us how we can catch a glimpse, actually, of the Perseid meteor shower is Scott McGillivray with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Perseids happen every year. I was kind of looking out for them. They're on right now.
Yes, every year. And this is one of the things I get asked all the time. Why does it happen at the same time every year? So I'm going to blame comets on this one.
Okay.
Why comets? Comets, they're a lot like my dog. They have tails, and everywhere they go, they leave sand. So there's this comet that's orbiting the sun, and it goes through the same path every 60, 70 years, leaves this trail of sand. Now along comes the Earth, which is traveling around the sun at about, 30 kilometers a second. So that's like 100,000 kilometers an hour. And it goes through this sandstorm in the same place every year. And all these sand particles enter our atmosphere. And at 100,000 kilometers an hour, they just burst into flames. And so at night we can look up and we can see these things as they hit the atmosphere, these big fireballs of space rocks burning up.
Fantastic. And can you collect these in the end?
Well, we can collect them. I've actually brought one in here today. Cool. I had this on last time I was on. Yeah, this is a space rock. Would you like to touch it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at that. It's definitely heavy.
It's very heavy.
So this just fell.
This is, well, it fell. It came into the atmosphere at 30 kilometers a second, burst into fire. You notice it's kind of smooth in some sections.
Actually so very smooth along there.
And that's where, you know, it's like lava on the surface. It was molten rock. It got so hot and so fiery. Yeah, and other places where it crumbled.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess impact. Yep. So how can people collect some of this?
Well, yeah. So this is the thing: is the Earth is actually taking in about 60 tons of space rock every day.
Really?
And it's just, you've probably been hit by little meteor flakes and not known it. Something cool about this: the reason it's so heavy, I have a magnet here that sticks to it.
Is it iron?
Space rocks are iron. So with all these little space rocks that are out there, now your roof of your house,
yikes,
that is actually a big meteorite collection thing. And if you're willing to do it, if you go through your gutters with a magnet, you can pick up all these little particles, and if you look at some of them under a microscope, if they look very glassy, there's a good chance that it's a space rock. So you can collect these at home. They're like little bits of sand, though.
Amazing. Now, if people would like to get a good glimpse of the Perseids, but they're in the middle of the city, probably not the best location.
No, it's not. So if you do want to see this meteor shower tonight, well, first of all, it helps to have a clear sky, the northern half of the province, I guess. But it's going on all month, so you can see them. If the sky clears up in a week, you'll be good. Get away from light pollution. Get away from the cities, somewhere you can see a lot of the stars. The other thing is you'll be looking up. You'll be looking at the entire sky. You don't need a telescope. So sitting in a chair or standing up probably isn't a good idea. I like to take a blanket out. I go camping, I lay it down in the grass, and I can just relax on a blanket, look up at the stars.
Take it all in.
Watch the fireballs shooting across.
Hopefully not get hit by anything.
Yeah, totally.
The next thing I wanted to chat with you about was about SpaceX. Now, they tried to recover a portion of SpaceX. What happened? It totally missed the net.
Well, we know about SpaceX because they've been. This is Elon Musk's company. All these tech billionaires are having fun building spaceships. So he's been landing his rockets back on barges for a couple of years now. The next step is the actual nose cone of the rocket. How do we recover that? That thing is worth $6 million. $6 million. So rather than just throw it away into the ocean, he's built a boat with a giant net on it. This was a couple days ago out in the Atlantic Ocean.
It was August 6th, I believe, or so.
Yeah.
Reduce, reuse, recycle? Is that what he's thinking
well, that's $6 million. And look at this. The big net boat catches it. If that thing touches the water, that salt water ruins it. $6 million just corroded away by the salt water. Here's an attempt from a couple months ago. This was over in the Pacific Ocean, an earlier rocket.
At first, it just looked like a boat, quite frankly.
It looks like a boat, yeah. It's actually controlled by an autopilot. Oh, so close.
That one's got to hurt.
Just missed it. $6 million into the ocean. Here's how they fix the problem.
Bigger net.
This is rocket science. Just get a bigger net.
Perfect.
That's it.
Perfect. Done and done. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
And bringing in your special meteorite.
Yeah, isn't that
cool?
awesome?
Love that. Thanks so much, Scott McGillivray with the Royal Astronomical Society. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Scott, I believe you're muted.
Okay, there. I think I've got to do this here. Okay, now I'm unmuted. Now I'm back. How am I doing now? I should be.
Got you now.
Okay, I'm good now. Yeah, so a few questions over here. Yeah, I think Ken answered there. If you search for Space Talk with Scott, way back early on, Lynn Collier decided to call it Space Talk with Scott, and I was like, whoa, you know what's going on? They really ran with it at Global. And so if you search for that, you can find their links. Or we have a bunch of them on the RASC Vancouver website. There's also a whole bunch on the global TV website, and they have them for about the last 5 or 6 years or so. Yes, that solar image is one that Ken took. One thing they had in the studio was they had that background image. So what I do before I go on is I usually send out a message to my network of astrophotography friends, and I say, hey, I need a background for the segment this week. And yeah, so somebody I've used several of Ken's, I've used some of Howard's. I think I had one of Gordon's astronomy, or the Andromeda Galaxy back there. It's kind of cool. If you want to see your stuff on TV, you can always email me, and maybe we'll get it on. What else is over there? Hi Nagar, how you doing? Yeah, Nagar's a friend of mine. Really glad she joined. She's probably going to start coming to all the events. And then one other thing you might have noticed in that last segment there is I had a lot of numbers, and I wasn't just rattling those off the top of my head, like 30 kilometers a second. And what I was doing was, that's the speed of the Earth moving through space, is before I go in and when I'm doing my rehearsal, I'm like, oh no, how fast is the Earth moving when it hits these things? So I look up like a set of basic numbers and I memorize those, and I just sort of tie those into my story. So anyway, I think I'm out of time, and so we'll be going over to Michelle Kunamoto in a second, but I'll definitely answer any questions that you have once in an hour, once we're at the end of the segment.